Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I am going to do a Dungeon Master workshop on Hoard of the Dragon Queen. And today is going to be pretty much the introduction to the adventure and also episode 1. And I'm going to be breaking this up into different workshops. Each chapter or episode is actually quite complicated and there's a lot that needs to be altered, so I need to actually spend a bit of time on them to actually give you what you need to know. So that's why I'm not doing it like the Lost Mine of Phandelver, where I did just one long 2-hour workshop. Yes, quick question, called Keg Computer. Do you follow the World Cup? No, I don't really. I'm not really a soccer fan or football fan or even a rugby fan. I live in New Zealand, so I don't really follow it that much. I know that sounds strange, you know, most New Zealanders are supposed to be right into playing rugby, but I don't really follow it that much. In any case, we are going to do a workshop on this adventure, which is Hoard of the Dragon Queen. And the first thing I'm going to say about this adventure is it's essentially the very first hardcover adventure book that was put out for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And when it was put out, it was actually the alpha playtest, or the document, the rough draft, was floating around amongst the alpha playtesters before the actual alpha playtest core rules were complete. That's for the monster manual and the player's handbook. So that means that a lot of the work done around this adventure didn't have a rule system that was completely fleshed out and finalized, and so hence there are a lot of problems that come up. Now, there are ways of sorting that out. A clever dungeon master will figure out how to solve most problems, but if you're a new dungeon master, I really feel like Hoard of the Dragon Queen is actually a giant elephant. You are much better to go and have a look at the video on how to run the Lost Mine of Phandelver, because there are minimal issues with that adventure, whereas Hoard of the Dragon Queen is a hoard of problems. But anyway, that's not what you're here for. You're here to figure out and be told how to best run Hoard of the Dragon Queen. So this is part of the Tyranny of Dragons storyline. There are essentially 2 books. Officially, there is 2 books that you can use to run Tyranny of Dragons storyline. One is Hoard of the Dragon Queen, and the second one is The Rise of Tiamat. And what people don't know is that's officially, there's actually 3 documents for Tyranny of Dragons. Hoard of the Dragon Queen, and then one that links Hoard of the Dragon Queen to The Rise of Tiamat, and that is called The Frozen Castle. Now, I will actually do a review on The Frozen Castle, and I will do a workshop on the Frozen Castle as well, but that is likely to be sometime down the track, provided there's enough interest for that, and I'm not sure that there necessarily is. We're going to see how this goes. I know that the Lost Mine of Phandelver workshop, people were really happy with that and seem to be quite pleased, and a lot of people watch it. We'll see how this one goes. What else have we got here? So basically, your adventuring party are going to be trying to stop the evil Queen of Dragons, Tiamat, from re-entering the Forgotten Realms. That is the premise of the story, which is what drove a lot of people to actually playing this game, and a lot of excitement around it, because it essentially said, you're going to get to fight a god, and who would not want to do that? It's like the biggest, baddest dragon there is, so why not? You can buy this book, Hoard of the Dragon Queen, from, you might still be able to pick it up from a game store close to you, but it's been around quite a long time. It's quite an old book, so you might find you have to get it online. You should be able to pick it up from the book depository. So if you're not in North America, you get free shipping from the book depository, so it's a good place to actually purchase it. Otherwise, if you're in North America, you're probably better off to purchase it from Amazon. And I do have, in the description, I'll put an Amazon affiliate link that you can click on to purchase the book if you don't already have it. But I suspect most people watching this already have the book anyway, so you won't need that. But it will be provided in the description if you need it. So the adventure, first thing is, it's a very linear adventure. It essentially leads the players and the dungeon master by the nose, literally from one location to the next. And when you get from to a set location, it opens up into what is called a sandbox, where you get to sort of go around and do what you want to do. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It can work well depending on the players at your table and how they like to play the game. Just give me a second. Okay, so what I'm going to say right now is this is quite a large book, and to run it successfully, you are probably going to have to read the entire thing first before you run it. This is one thing I don't like about these large adventure books, is something where you have to read the entire thing in advance, and it's something like 200 pages or more that you have to sort of get your head around. That's a lot of preparation time, a lot of stuff to remember, which you probably won't remember because there is so much information. I like the small block adventures. I think they work best for a dungeon master. So you have to read pretty much the whole thing to be able to make it work as far as I'm concerned. Make sure you present the factions. There are 5 factions in the world, in the Forgotten Realms, operating at this time, and they play a huge role, a really big part in the story itself, and they're connected to the story and the adventure that you're going to be running, and also to the NPCs they will encounter. So make sure you actually use the factions, and those factions are the Lord's Alliance, which is probably the largest one, the Emerald Enclave, the Order of the Gauntlet, the Harpers, and the Zentarim, the Zents, basically. They're sort of like the evil, black, covert organisation that operates. Now, even with all of that information there, and at your starting point, the Dungeon Master will still have to come up with a lot of tie-ins, or encourage the players, would be better, to actually link their group together, each one of them coming up with a reason why they are travelling together. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of miserable. You know, you don't want to have to try and say, okay, this is the adventure, this is why you're together. Try to get them to come up with that information yourself. You know, you don't want to spend all the time. You're just supposed to be the catalyst and seed to get them to think of these things. Now, what I will say about this adventure, it's done something that a lot of adventures that have been released don't do. And this one provides really nice background, personal background information. There's like a background chart. It's like a personal character goal for every single character who will be at the table. And it ties them into key elements and points in the story, the Hoard of the Dragon Queen. Now, the only hassle with that, and I'll show you which pages it's on in a second, is that once they complete that personal goal, it's done. It's done and dusted. So you might want to actually pick up and follow through with giving them another one that's further on in the story, so you constantly got that personal motivation for their character to keep doing this. Otherwise, sometimes the player characters, I would say more likely the players, will find it hard to sort of have the motivation and enthusiasm to keep going. That can be a little bit troublesome at times. So it's in the back of the book. So you want to look at the appendices right at the very back, and I believe it is just before all the stat blocks on pages, yeah, it's page 87, okay? So right there, it's got the background templates, and you can roll them up, or you could just have them pick one. You can literally just print them all out, cut them off in little bits of paper and say, poof, here you go. Now the only problem with doing that is the players will learn a lot of information that they might not necessarily need to have right now. So it's up to you how you do this. I would suggest just randomly rolling a dice and then give it to them, and if they say, no, it doesn't really fit my character, then let them pick another one. That would be the simplest way to deal with it. So on page 87, right there. Okay, so that is the background stuff. I'm just going to have another drink of water. Right, so I want you to consider using milestones. So this is when you level up the characters at set points where you think it's appropriate. And the reason for doing that is there just is not enough experience points in the adventure to be awarded to level them up at the speed that this adventure expects them to be leveled up at. So they're supposed to be starting at level 1, and by the end they'll be level 7 or 8, somewhere in that vicinity. And there is nowhere near enough experience to do that. So Milestone's much more sensible to do that. How it's laid out is that each chapter represents a new character level milestone. So in chapter 1 or episode 1 they'll be level 1, and by the end of episode 1 they will level up and become level 2. The only exception in this pattern is that episode 5 doesn't work that way. Episode 5 is very short, so what you do is you just skip that, and at episode 6 sorry, episode 6 they'll level up at that point. Okay, so you're just going to be sort of back, basically they have to wait a little bit longer, get a run 5 and 6 before they level up. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's that little bit. Some of the chapters are quite long and other chapters are quite short, and I know a lot of people are saying, well, you know, this chapter's short, this chapter's long, they really shouldn't be leveling up at this point. Don't worry about it, just ignore that fact, it doesn't matter. Levels and experience are just a timing tool, really, and a way of encouraging players to keep doing stuff, but it is also just a timing tool. Alright, there is a very nice map in this book, and I suggest that you go get a photocopy of it because you're going to use it quite a lot. And it's this map right here. It's the Sword Coast. Okay, so that map I used a lot. I used it heaps, constantly, and the players will need that map. So photocopy it because you're constantly going to be referring to that map, and it would be sensible to have a photocopy of it. Right, where is it? Photocopying. Okay, so Kobold Press published this adventure for Wizards of the Coast, and it's written by Wolfgang Breyer and Steve Winter. Now, both of these individuals are experienced game designers. They've been around a long time. They know what they're doing. But as I said, the problem with this adventure is Hoard of the Dragon Queen was still being written, and its final draft was being pumped out when the Dungeons and Dragons 5e rule system was not completely finished, which means nothing is balanced. Nothing really, I mean, I don't believe in balance anyway, but this is really a brutal adventure, very, very tough, particularly in the early stages of the adventure. It's either very hard to run and play in, or impossible to successfully play without altering huge amounts of the adventure. You will need to modify almost everything in this adventure for it to work. So if you have a first printing of Hoard of the Dragon Queen, you'll find you'll need the Errata, and you can get that off the Wizards of the Coast website. I'm going to provide a link in the description later on so you can download the Errata, because there were a few things that cropped up in the adventure that need to be corrected. And I'm going to go over them really briefly now, because it's not as short as The Lost Mine of Phandelver, but it's not hugely long either. Okay, so Cool Keg Computer, is there a level requirement for this adventure? You're starting at level 1, but given that it's so tough, there's no reason why you couldn't start them at level 2. I guess the problem with starting at level 2 is, one, they're less likely to die, but the whole idea at the very beginning of the adventure is to give the impression of an impossible situation. That's what the designers were going for, and I'm going to provide you with a whole bunch of solutions or options to try to make that work so it doesn't turn into a great huge ball of gaga, basically. So if you have a look on page 4, that's the map of the Sword Coast, you'll see that there are a few problems, that alterations that have been made. So if you have a printing after the first printing, you should be fine. I don't know if there is a second printing, honestly, but if you've got a first printing, check in the front of your book to see if you do. And Nesme is now Nesme. Silver Moon is now spelt with a Y, so Silvery Moon instead. And the city itself has moved west, and it sits just under the S in Silvery Moon. Oh, pardon me. Okay, so next, Everland now has a location marker above the L in Everland, so that's where it's located. Trill is moved south and is above the CO in Sconbell, and Darkhold has moved southwest of the first T and Sunset Mountains on the map. Okay, all of this is in the Errata, so if you don't remember this stuff, it doesn't matter. Erebor is now Erebor. It's basically spelt different. It was spelt IRIABOR, and now it's spelt IRIAEBOR. That's all, nothing else. Easting has moved to the crossroads to the west, and in episode 1, Saving the Mill on page 10, the first sentence that used to say the town mill is now the town mill area 4. Okay, that's basically so you knew where to look on the map. And then the sanctuary on page 11, in the first sentence it said Temple of Chanti, and it is now the Temple of Chanti area 3. So on the map it's area 3. If you're wondering, you know, when you get the map it's numbered, but it doesn't actually tell you what the numbers represent. So that's part of the problem with all of this. I'm not going to go through all the errata. I'm only dealing with episode 1 and the introduction to this adventure today. I'll go through the errata for the other episodes when I do that particular workshop. So I'll get rid of that. That's the errata covered. You'll need probably the online supplement. Now the online supplement includes everything that was not put in the adventure, such as magic items that were not included in the book, and any monsters or stat blocks that were not included in the book. Most of these items, these magic items that are in the supplement, and the monsters and stat blocks are probably going to be in the monster manual or in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but not necessarily all of them. So I will provide a link to that supplement so you can download it so you have it available. That would be very useful, I'm sure. And I suspect the reason they didn't put all the magic items and all of the stat blocks into the book is it would have made the page count bigger, and you know, I guess that's always been an issue. You know, the longer the book, the bigger the book, the more expensive. Okay, when it comes to maps, if you want digital maps for these locations, and you're not just going to photocopy maps yourself, but you want them digital, you can get the Hoard of the Dragon Queen maps online by going to the Red Epic by Jared Blando, okay? And I will provide a link below so you can access his maps and download them. They will cost you a little bit. I believe most of those maps are about $2.50. If you have a look around and you don't have the money for that, but you still want digital maps, then you can probably find them by just Googling them online. You'll find most of the maps have already been scanned onto the internet and you can pick them up. They don't necessarily come at high resolution. The website that I've just talked about has high resolution, really large images, well scanned, you know, well laid out. They're not just they're original file and document material, so that's why they're so good. Okay, so that's maps. Okay, so I just said that the adventure is not really suitable for new players. I would say it's definitely not suitable for new DMs either, just because it's so hard. You're better off to go with the Lost Mine and Found Delver. So just so you know up front, there aren't that many dragon battles in this adventure. Although it's called Hoard of the Dragon Queen, it honestly doesn't have that many dragons. There may be it's like a couple, okay, that's it. Most of it is cultists, human cultists, or different races that are cultists, and kobolds. That's the extent of it. And the basic story is that Severin, the new cult leader, or Cult of the Dragon leader, he's decided to try and find 5 dragon masks, combine them, and create what's called the Mask of the Dragon Queen. And this is supposed to be used to get Tiamat out of her 9 Hells prison into the real world, or the Forgotten Realms. And we don't want that happening, so you're going to try and stop that, or the players are going to certainly try and stop that with their characters. Now, Severin believes that living dragons, not undead dragons like Dracoliches, should be worshipped and revered. And unfortunately for him, Tiamat has entertained this, found it quite amusing, and provided Severin with all the information he needs to find these masks and put them together, hopefully, and release her. And chances are Severin will be successful because he has got somebody who's on his side, who's a god, pretty much feeding him information. The Cult of the Dragon are collecting the dragon masks. That's one of the key things they're doing in this adventure. They're building an army as well, and they are raiding the Sword Coast to try and pick up as much treasure as they possibly can, and this will be tribute for Tiamat. That's why all the raiding has taken place. This is the whole focus of the whole story, is chasing the masks, but primarily the treasure hoard that is going to be given to Tiamat eventually, probably in the Rise of Tiamat. Well, I know it's going to be in the Rise of Tiamat. So there are some good resources for preparing for this adventure, and you can check out slyflourish.com or slyflourish.com. I've talked about Sly Flourish before. That's Mike Shaw. He's got a pretty good article on how to do this, how to run episode 1 and all the other episodes as well. And then Merrick's Musings. Now, Merrick Black, you can find him on merrickb.com, and Merrick has done a really good job of breaking it down and giving you sort of a good idea of how to actually run those episodes in the adventure. And a lot of my resources I have taken from those particular locations. So if you're wondering how come I'm repeating a lot of what they've said, it's because they provided such useful information. Okay. All right. So the players' characters, their key focus in this adventure is to discover that the raiders are part of the Cult of the Dragon, then disrupt the Cult of the Dragon's goals, while also tracking the cult, figuring out what their activities are, and then also figuring out where the treasure is being taken back to, their main base of operations, where their collection point is. So they're going to have to destroy a dragon hatchery, they're going to have to rescue and help some allies along the way, as I said, tracking the cult to their main castle, kill or capture cult leaders or supporters, really important also. Hi Paul, how can I help you? How do you deal with players who have read the adventure ahead of time? Change stuff. Adjust things. That's what I do. I have people who are playing in my Hoard of the Dragon Queen adventure right now. No, not Hoard of the Dragon. Curse of Strahd. I'm running Curse of Strahd, and there are people who know what's going to take place, and I change stuff. And then they just have to deal with it. They can't play the, I didn't know. I know I've played it before. Okay, that's the best way, is just change stuff. Okay, if that didn't answer your question, Paul, and you're not satisfied, you just let me know in the comments, okay? Also, too, one of the key things they have to do is either capture Skyreach Castle or at least gain control of it. Those are all the key elements to this particular story that they will have to achieve throughout it. You need to really be willing to alter the adventure on the fly, as the players will probably try to take the whole thing off the railway track. They will probably try to break it somehow, realizing, one, that it's either frustrating or it's not satisfying, or they've figured out a different way of doing things. The problem is, if they don't follow the cult and the treasure in particular, it's following the treasure that's really important, they might lose the trail and never pick it up again. So there's the biggest problem for you, and for them, actually. Okay, so getting into episode 1, Greenest in Flames. So I've covered pretty much all the bits and pieces in terms of the intro, the basic gist of things. There's like one sentence of character hooks, basically that appendix, okay? So the one sentence, you go to the appendix, you check out the character hooks there. That's where you want to go. The approach is pretty simple, okay? Your starting point is that there is basically a blue dragon attacking Greenest while they're travelling towards Greenest. For whatever reason, you have to decide, or the players can decide why they're going to Greenest. Maybe they've heard something, maybe they haven't. Maybe it's just their hometown. You know, there's lots of different ways you can do this. And this dragon is attacking Greenest, and it's also under attack by a whole bunch of raiders. They don't really know who the raiders are. So the players and the characters in particular shouldn't really know that the Cult of the Dragon are the raiders straight away. They're going to find that out later on. That's part of the adventure and how this will work is, I believe, Prisoner. There's a mission called Prisoner, and that's where they'll hopefully pick up that information and find out who these raiders are, if they do that particular mission, that is. So the characters have a few choices at the beginning. They could decide not to get involved and just sit back in some shrubbery in the trees and watch Greenest burn. That's one way of doing it. And there's a chances are there'll be a few people who see a dragon and say, yeah, I'm not going anywhere near that. I've had that happen to me. It's very hard to get players past that, and I totally understand considering how difficult the adventure is. And you know, first level character, and suddenly you know they'll ask you, how big a dragon is this? And you say it's a big dragon. Well, they know it's probably going to be an adult or an ancient dragon. They don't want to go near that thing. Or they can decide to help the villagers of Greenest, either to get them out of Greenest. Now, the adventure doesn't really talk about that, but you could do it, okay? Don't block that. That certainly should be an option, but that won't get them to the keep. And that will mean if they try to get hold of some of these villagers and just get them out of Greenest and find a safe location, which means they're probably going to go some distance away, then the place will burn and those missions won't get achieved and they'll lose out on that particular part of it, okay? Otherwise, they help the villagers and try to get them to the keep. And the very first encounter, the NPCs will be trying to convince the players' characters to actually take them to the keep because they believe that's the safest location. There's too much death and destruction taking place, too much pillaging and looting. So the very first problem you have is the encounter, Seek the Keep, okay? And now Seek the Keep is on page 7, and it's a horrible situation. The mechanics for it, running it, are complicated. It's probably going to cause a lot of stress and pretty much bring your group to their knees. There is a section just before that called Wandering Encounters, and I don't recommend using Wandering Encounters at all, although you could if you really wanted to, but I don't think it's a wise thing. That's just me. I don't really feel like when you're doing this sort of thing you should punish your players for what is pretty much an oversight on the design of an adventure. So yeah, just bear that in mind. Okay, so Seek the Keep. There are a couple of problems with this because you're supposed to rescue the Swift family. That's a father, mother, and some children. And the 8 kobolds that they encounter, 8 kobolds, if you have a tank in the front, will pretty much just surround them, use their advantage, their pack tactics, and beat that particular tank to the ground, and then the rest are going to be very vulnerable. But they're also going to be trying to kill off the mother, the father, and the children if the players get involved. So that's really tricky. So you try to give them a little bit of space so that they can actually intervene and intercept the kobolds before they get to the family. Otherwise, that family is going to be dead. Our raiding group is 1d6 kobolds and 1d4 cultists. Okay, that's really hard. That's stupid. And if the DM rolls high on a 6-sided dice or high on a 4-sided dice, it makes it worse. It's not really a sensible way to do things. I would take the average if I were you And the adventure actually states that if you roll up 6 kobolds, one of them is a winged kobold, and they're even harder and tougher. So, and they fly. So yeah, not very nice if you ask me. Right, now there is a map in here. I'm going to just flick you through to page 10. This is the Greenest map, and you're probably going to use this quite a lot. Basically, it's got numbers on it, but there's absolutely no indication what those numbers represent. Just numbers. There's no ledger. There's no labels. So what do? Well, fortunately for you, Merrick had already figured that one out. And if you go to Merrick's website, which I believe is, where is it? Here we go. So if you look on page 10 at the map of Greenest, Steve Winter, who's the designer, he said that number 1 is the keep, number 2 is where the tunnel emerges along the stream, number 3 is the temple, and number 4 is the mill. And that should give you all of the labels that you require for that particular map. And if I haven't given you all of them, you let me know, but I think that covers it. Okay, sorry guys if I'm having to drink a lot, because a lot of talking. See, it's always difficult if I've had to talk all the time. Okay, now characters can try to sneak past enemies once they save the Swift family. If they save the Swift family, they could try and retreat. They could try and deceive the raiders. Most of the raiders will probably just assume that they are cultists, because none of the cultists are dressed in cult garb. They're just dressed as like normal people, okay? They don't actually have to fight everybody, and if they do have to fight, they're probably not going to make it to the keep. That's unlikely, okay? I'm just going to turn this. Am I going the wrong way? I'm going to turn it that way. Okay. So that makes any action that the party make. I don't like the idea of a series of combats, one after the other, with almost no rests, and it's a constant grind, and we're doing this at level 1. And this is essentially what could wind up happening, okay? So just bear that in mind. Try to drop some stuff for them on cultists and kobolds that they can use, because they're going to run out of resources pretty fast. Most level 1 characters who are casters may have, 2 spell slots? They're going to have 2 spell slots that can cure wounds. That's it, nothing more. And after that, they're out, expended. If the party have to contend with a stacked deck, which this is, they will most likely have to fight literally every single raiding group, and the deck is stacked against them almost completely from the very beginning. If you have a look at that particular section and the mechanics for it, it's awful, utterly appalling. Okay, every time they make a stealth check and they fail, 2 of them fail, that's the chance of encountering another group. And every time they try to retreat, they come across more townsfolk, and the chances are those townsfolk will make further checks more difficult, and they'll come across yet more raiders. So it just compounds the problem. I really don't understand why they did this. What you want to do is try to place, as I said, healing potions or scrolls that they can use on defeated enemies that they can pick up and use once their resources are expended, because they're going to spend most of their resources pretty quickly, and they're not going to be able to take a short rest. Certainly can't take a long rest. So yeah, that's not going to be an option. If you don't have a dedicated healer in the party, you're probably going to wind up with the party having a total party kill. Everybody will get wiped out, or they will just have to run away and watch Greenest burn. That's ultimately what's likely to happen. I've already talked about trying to run away. Yeah, 1d6 townsfolk. Every time you try to retreat, you're going to find 1d6 townsfolk. And every time you have 8+ townsfolk with you, there's a chance that you're going to come across more raiders. It's awful. Use the mechanics provided. I really don't know that you should. truthfully, it's so complicated, I would ditch most of it and decide whether you want them to be able to retreat or just get into the keep and be done with it and then get into the missions, because otherwise that whole chapter is like never going to get used. It's just going to be gone. Okay, so I've gone through that. Now, so I've talked about how horrible Seek the Keep is, and it is. If the group actually do make it to the keep, they will meet a couple of NPCs. That's the Governor Nighthill and the Castleton Escobert the Red, who's a dwarf. And there's a little bit of information on page 7 on them. There's a reasonable, about a paragraph each, about 2 paragraphs for Nighthill, so you can actually role play those characters. Don't make that the focus. I would imagine that they are just really there to give them the next mission, provide them with some resources or information, and really that's their key role in the adventure. Don't get too carried away. If they actually bother talking to the governor is probably more than willing to give them a tactical rundown of the situation and also their future missions throughout the night's siege, because all of this is going to take place, episode 1, through just one night. That's it. They can take a short rest now, okay, but if they do so, they can't engage in any of the missions for the next hour. That's what the adventure says. I really wouldn't worry too much about that. I would just let them take the short rest and then run the next mission straight after they had their short rest, because chances are they will have used all their hit dice up with a short rest, and they will be just sitting on whatever hit points they have. They've probably used all their spells up by now, and all they've got is whatever they find, I guess. The party are not meant to have a fair fight, okay? Episode 1, there's nothing fair about it. It is supposed to be really hard. All they're supposed to do is survive this particular night. Once they're survived, and it's been drummed into them that the Cult of the Dragon and these raiders are to be feared, then you've done your job. That's essentially what this whole episode is about. They don't actually have to do all the missions. So if they decide to do none of the missions, they could just sit in the castle and say, no, we've had it. Or if you want them to actually use the rest of the adventure and the other missions there, then provide them with something to do that with. So I would suggest having a priest or a healer in the castle who can heal them, or provide maybe just a couple of spare potions of healing, although I would imagine that any priest or healer is probably almost on empty, since there will be a lot of injured people already, and any sort of healing potions have probably already been used up for really serious injuries already. So don't provide an endless supply, just a couple, okay? And it wouldn't hurt to let the party help themselves to any mundane weapons or armor or gear that is sitting in the castle's armory. So allow them to retool their armor and their weapons. If they haven't got ranged weapons, let them pick up a longbow or a light crossbow or anything that they might be able to use. If they haven't got plate armor and they can wear plate armor, let there be a set of plate armor there. I know it's level 1, you think, well, that's sort of asking, that's a bit much. But if you just want them to sit back and do nothing, that's essentially what they'll do, because they won't be able to cope, okay? But yeah, I would provide them something out of the armory. The first mission they do that is offered up is the Old Tunnel. Now the Old Tunnel it looks really easy, but it's absolutely not easy. There are 2 rat swarms in there, and between them they can easily kill a level 1 character without too much effort. It is supposed to be the secret exit out of the castle that leads to the stream, and the governor wants them to open up that location so they can use it to try and rescue townsfolk. So that's your first mission ahead of you, okay? The problem is this tunnel exit has a rusted lock gate at the very end of it. Even if they get past the rat swarm in the tunnel, it's got a rusted lock gate. If they fail a check, they're going to break their thieves' tools off in there. They can get the key off the Castleton. Escobert the Red has the castle, or the key to actually unlock it. At least that would be the most sensible thing to do, because at least the DC is a lot lower, and it'll make it a little bit easier for them to get through that location. But the problem is, if they have to break it down or they make too much noise, there is going to be the chance of drawing the attention of a patrol, because there are patrols or raiders moving along the stream bed, and this gate opens out onto that stream bed, and that's a real problem, because cultists have high hit points, kobolds have pack tactics and get advantage when they fight together as a pack, and so chances are they are going to be found, just because the DC is so high and getting through that gate is so difficult. What is worse is that there's a patrol every 10 minutes, and I would suggest ditching the second patrol. Once they come out of the tunnel, I would just have one patrol they have to deal with and ditch the second patrol, because if it comes and they're still trying to sort themselves out and they're still there after 10 minutes, they probably won't survive, because that particular patrol has an ambush drake, I believe, and that ambush drake will probably finish them off. It's pretty beastie. Okay, it's a nasty piece of work. The missions are not assigned in any particular order, and that can cause a bit of confusion, and I would suggest using Sly Flourish's examples of the order that you should follow, just to eliminate some of the confusion that would be created if you didn't do that. And the order he's provided is Seek the Keep, which I've already talked about, the Old Tunnel, which I just talked about now, followed by the Sanctuary, Prisoners, Save the Mill, Dragon Attack, the Sallyport, and finally the Half-Dragon Champion. Okay, that would be the order that I would follow. You will struggle to get the group to continue the missions once they've finished trying to get the tunnel mission done. The chances are they won't want to do anything. So if you don't provide them with healing, they probably won't continue. And yeah, I'd still recommend giving them healing or just let them sit back. Okay, that's how it's supposed to be run. All right. Next is I'm going to talk about these out of the order I just talked about, primarily because that's how it's laid out in the book. But as I said, the order I've just provided is probably the order you want to try and run it in, if you can. Okay, those are the sequence of events would be most sensible. So the next one is the Sallyport on page 9, and this involves raiders battering down the front gate of the castle, and the party are asked to go and reseal the Sallyport and try to fight off the raiders who are trying to get through. Now, this mission is given to them by Escabert the Red. There are 2 large waves of raiders to fight back, so that's really, really difficult. I recommend giving a small breather of at least a few minutes between the first wave and the second wave, so that they can organize themselves, reposition themselves, swallow healing potions, maybe throw about some loose rubble in front of the Sallyport to block it up a bit more, things like that, while they try to make repairs. Okay, put potions on the acolyte would be my recommendation. When they kill the acolyte, put a potion or 2 on the acolyte that the party can use. And I wouldn't let the acolyte drink it, because that would just suck. The adventure assumes that someone in the party has the ability to cast Mending. But if nobody can cast Mending, then they're going to have to go and find an NPC in the castle, and there is one who can cast Mending on them, on the gate. But the problem is, it's going to take time, and that time you determine as the dungeon master. You might decide it takes a minute or 2 minutes, instead of it being a 5-minute process to mend the gate. It's going to be 6 or 7 minutes. But I wouldn't throw more raiders at them just because they don't have mending. It's just one of those things. Okay, so it states that mending the gate with the spell will take 5 minutes, because they have to cast it 5 times, and mending takes 1 minute for every casting to actually, that's how long it takes to actually cast it before it works. And I would suggest don't let one of the player characters be busy in the middle of a combat. So if they are trying to mend in the middle of combat, I would just encourage them to stop mending, engage in the combat. Once the combat's finished, spend a few minutes applying the mending spell, then the next wave comes, they fight them off, and then they finish off the gate with mending, and it's done. That's the easiest way to deal with the Sallyport, in my opinion. The next one is... Oh, did I just skip a page? Oh, I might have. I talked about the Sally Port, and I'm supposed to... Oh, Dragon. That's right. I'm supposed to talk about the Dragon attack. That's a brutal one, that Dragon attack. So the Dragon attack is on page 9. It has the defenders of the castle trying to fight off an adult blue dragon called Lenathon. Now, Lenathon isn't really particularly keen on this battle. He doesn't really want to do somebody else's job. He just wants to go home, basically. He's been attacking this town for ages and feels like it's time for the other raiders to do their job, and he just leaves. So he's not actually that difficult to convince to leave, but he will probably scare the bejesus out of the player characters, particularly the players, more likely the players, okay, because it's an adult blue dragon, and they're level 1. Now, chances are there's no chance of really fighting this thing, not successfully, not unless the DM does a bit of a fudging of the dice or changes the way they handle the dragon. And that's essentially what I'm going to talk about right now. So the characters are asked to help drive off the dragon, who is killing large numbers of castle defenders and guards. But they don't have to do that. They could sit that out and just let the dragon butcher as many guards in the castle as you like. And that's actually what this whole encounter is about. Steve Winter just wanted a scene where they had to watch as many castle defenders or guards and NPCs died, and they could do nothing about it. That's the whole concept behind this encounter. So an adult blue dragon against first level characters with its dragon breath, and all it's going to do is fly and use its dragon breath, has absolutely there's no chance they can possibly succeed on a saving throw. Even if they succeed on a saving throw, it's going to kill them outright. There's no saving throw, death saving throw, it'll kill them outright. At level 1, they will not have enough hit points. They haven't got a hope, okay? I don't recommend targeting the player's characters with a dragon, because you will kill their characters for sure, okay? And we don't want them to get frustrated and never come back to this adventure. What you want to do is kill as many of the NPCs on the top of the castle as you possibly can. That's the whole point of the mission. So kill as many as you possibly can and make them feel really helpless. That's the whole point, right? And they can convince that dragon to break off its attacks by using a deception check or a persuasion check as it's flying by, even in trying to intimidate it. It's actually not particularly keen on engaging these particular characters because it knows that they're a lot tougher than the castle defenders. The castle defenders haven't done any damage to this dragon whatsoever. And that's going to be contested by the dragon's insight or wisdom check. Okay, that's how you'll run that. If the party starts to attack the dragon, which will be flying past and swooping down and using its breath attack, flying off, waiting for its breath attack to recharge and coming back for another run once it's recharged its breath attack, try to hit all of the NPCs right next to that character who took the shot, because you've got to use ranged attacks. If you don't have a ranged weapon, you're not going to be in this engagement. This is why I say let them go into the armory and go and find some stuff they can use, because then they can pick up longbows and light crossbows and actually use them. Okay. The dragon never lands and will only use its breath weapon. Okay, that's it. Don't let it land. It never lands. Don't do that. NPC defenders are replaced as they are lost throughout the round. So even though they might be dying in droves, there's more to replace them. Okay, and Lenathon should fly away once it takes 24 damage if they engage in combat and don't either deceive it, persuade it, or intimidate it to get rid of it. If they actually engage in a fight, they only have to do 24 damage on the creature or more, or score a critical hit, and then it will leave. And that's the end of that encounter. So that should scare the bejesus out of them. I'm pretty sure it will. The next one is prisoners. That's on page 9 as well. Now, this has Governor Nighthill asking the characters to capture a prisoner. Now, capturing a prisoner can be done when they do the old tunnel. When they do the old tunnel mission, if they manage to actually capture somebody, they can complete that part at the same time, which actually will probably be a lot easier to achieve if they did it that way. Hopefully they do actually just take a captive, and then they don't have to go out again, find a raiding group, attack them, knock somebody unconscious and bring them back. This should be reasonably easy for them to achieve, okay? Out of everything that I've seen so far and had to run. And it should be quite entertaining as they have to negotiate with either a kobold, a mercenary or a cultist to get information out of them. I know my party had a lot of fun. I'm sure your party of players will too. And I don't think you'll have any problems with that particular mission, running that particular mission. It'll be fine. It should also reveal at this point that the raiders are the Cult of the Dragon, or working for the Cult of the Dragon. That's where they'll pick up that information. Okay. Next one is Save the Mill. This is on page 10, and the Cult of the Dragon have set an ambush for the party. Their activities throughout the night have been picked up on, either while they were trying to get from the outskirts of Greenest to the keep and saving townsfolk. They've picked up on that, or some of the other missions that they've done, they've picked up on that, and they've decided to set an ambush. And this ambush is not necessarily for the players' characters, it could be for the castle defenders. That's perfectly acceptable as well. And they're basically burning the old mill where there's stockpiled flour, and you can't lose all your flour in the middle of a raid, otherwise the village can't feed itself, so flour is really important. So that's the whole key behind that particular mission. Allow the characters to make wisdom and insight checks to determine the cultists' ruse, okay? But they need to be quite close. Even a perception check would be helpful, but this has to be nearer to the mill. They have to leave the castle, go closer to the mill in some sort of cover of some kind, and they can make a perception check, an insight check, a wisdom check to try to determine that actually those fires are not actually burning the mill, it's just a ruse and they've just been planted around the mill to look like it is burning. And once they learn that, hopefully they realise it's a trap. They can't do it from the walls, they must do it up close, and if they're smart, they'll leave. And any checks that the players' characters make should be contested by a charisma or performance check by the raiders. Just make one dice roll. Don't do multiple checks. That's ridiculous. And that's will be contested. Okay, that's their contestant. If the party actually does the mission, I feel sorry for them, really. Likely to be a total party kill. It's a really bad situation. Not so much the battle outside. It's once they get inside, they're going to be outnumbered heavily and outclassed. Okay. It's absolutely all right for the party to make the choice to never go near the mill or complete this mission. And in fact, it's actually the right choice. The next one is the Sanctuary on page 11. This has the characters trying to save a large group of townsfolk who have barricaded themselves inside the temple of Chanti. Now, this is by far one of the most complex and difficult missions to complete and run, excluding seeking the keep. And my suggestion to you is, I wouldn't even bother running it. If you do yourself a favour and just ignore it. I mean, you could run it if you wanted, but there's 3 patrols all moving around. It's going to be really difficult to do it, and I don't think it's actually going to work out for you. The only way that this group is going to be successful with doing the Sanctuary is if they are successful in either tricking the cultists, creating multiple distractions, or drawing the 3 patrols away from the temple. If they start engaging in a fight and take out the back group, get in the back, which is what the adventure actually talks about, and then there's a timer going as the gates and the front doors being battered down by the other patrols, the chances are they won't make it, because they've got to drag all these townsfolk back to the castle. How do you deal with townsfolk surrounded in a temple, get them out, rescue them, and then get them from the temple back to the castle? It's a suicide mission, and truthfully, if the players don't want to do it, they've done you a favour. It's probably the right choice. But in any case, if they don't go and rescue the townsfolk, make sure that temple burns to the ground and you kill all the townsfolk in them. just to make them feel really bad about it. Remember, we're trying to build up the feeling that it's hopeless and that the raiders, the cult of the dragon, are to be feared, and that's the whole point. Okay. Next, what do we got here? Oh, the last one. I believe it is the half dragon champion on page 12. So this is, there's so many missions in here that are so tough and so brutal on the players. I really feel bad, you know. One of the things is you look at it and they're actually, some of them look like really cool missions, but the chances are at level 1 they'll never be able to successfully pull them off. Certainly not all of them. And that's the whole point. They aren't supposed to be able to pull off all of them. But the half dragon champion is like the biggest carrot under the sun for any player. It's on page 12, as I said. It has Khan Rath challenge the castle defenders to single combat or a duel. And the reason he's doing this is, one, he's got captives. He's got children captive, and he's got a woman captive as well. And this is their opportunity to rise to the occasion and make that ultimate sacrifice, essentially. Hi Melissa, what have you got here? You're kind of bloodthirsty, just let it burn, he says. Yeah, well, the thing with the temple is they would burn it down. It won't necessarily burn completely down, but kill all the villagers. You know, in the end, there will be villagers who have hidden and survived, but you're trying to make them feel bad. Okay, you're trying to reinforce the fact that they don't have a hope. They just have to weather it, so that they feel so angry. Hopefully not angry at you, the dungeon master, but so angry at the cult of the dragon that they want to go after them. That's really what this whole episode's about. Okay, so back to the half dragon. So he has hostages. This is honestly a fight. It's a half dragon. There's pretty much no chance that an NPC will succeed and beat Kyrath. And it's probably absolutely no chance that the player's character will succeed. Only one of them can go out there, okay? So, Legderosa. He's got a great sword. He does a lot of damage. He's high level. He has 2 attacks. It's fine to kill off Margoth, who's the NPC. Basically, Margoth is one of the defenders and his sister's down there. Now, he wants to go down there and challenge the half-dragon to the battle. He will sacrifice himself. The players don't have to go down there and do this. It's perfectly fine for the NPC to take that final hit, and he will die, okay? Or the players can go and do it and make that ultimate sacrifice. They don't know that hopefully you're going to change that a little bit, okay? The last blow will definitely kill an NPC, but it won't necessarily kill a player's character. Once he takes down the characters to 0 hit points, and he probably will, that final blow, it actually says a final blow will mean that they fail 1 death saving throw. Actually, when they're on 0 hit points, it's supposed to be 2. So make sure they mark off 2. So they only got 1 saving throw left. It is now up to you as the dungeon master to decide whether the party or the healers in the castle can make it to his to the downed character in time to save them or not. It's up to you. You decide that. I suggest don't kill him, because once Kynroth, the half-dragon, defeats him and the kobolds leave and the raiders leave, they can go and rescue their fallen comrade. And in the case of Margoth, they can at least take his body back in. Okay? In any case, whether they succeed or not, all the hostages are released. If they try to get around this particular encounter, if they try to trick, if they try to open up an attack, all the hostages get killed, and half-dragon will leave, and so will the kobolds and the raiders, and that'll be that. So essentially that's how you're going to have to contend with episode 1 and starting your Hoard of the Dragon Queen adventure. Look, I think it's a tough adventure, and I know it sounds really brutal how I've talked about it. Melissa's just pointed that out. It sounds horrible, sounds like I'm a killer DM, but really, this is set up to be like that, this whole chapter. You do not have to run it this way. You don't have to run it the way I've suggested. I've just talked about some of the things that I came across and encountered and noticed when I was doing it. And yeah, I'm just wanting to make sure you have as much information as possible. So that's essentially all I have to say on Hoard of the Dragon Queen, Episode 1, Greenest in Flames. I'm going to do more videos for each episode in future weeks as time passes. I don't know if I'll do Episode 2 next weekend because it took a lot of homework and time to put this together, and I feel like I need 2 weeks to prepare sometimes. I might do like a painting tutorial, or just actually wouldn't even do a tutorial, just paint some miniatures and people can hang out and watch me paint while I chat and talk about stuff and answer questions. Maybe I'll do that next weekend. I haven't decided yet. If you found this video helpful or informative, please share, like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you have any questions about Hoard of the Dragon Queen in Episode 1, you can put it in the comments at the bottom after I've finished the live stream, or you can ask your questions after this live stream. I'll keep running the live stream for a little while, so you can ask questions about the adventure overall. I'll hang around for a little while so I can answer those questions, and you can give me all your questions, and I'll try to do my best to answer them. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.